What's happening, guys? My name's Austin, and thanks for tuning in for the next episode of the DevvE Weekly Roundup. And as usual, I'm sitting down with Mr. Davin Broadbent this week. Davin, how you doing, buddy?
Very good. Thanks, Austin. Yourself?
Doing well, my friend. So there's been so much going on, and I want to name, because I know that this has been talked about in the telegrams, that the vesting is coming to an end soon. Elections are happening in the States, which I know kind of people feel that all over the world, but that has traditionally been very bullish for markets. Regardless of the outcome, it has been bullish for the crypto market specifically. And I know that there's just so much in the background happening at DevvE that is, dare I say, kind of lining up really nicely with this stuff. And so I want to kick it over to you, man. What direction do you want to go this week? What are the high impact items?
Right. There is so much. There's lots as usual going on, kind of behind the scenes. But I think yes, the vesting coming into an end is something that obviously we hadn't planned. We hadn't planned it to align as perfectly as it has. The sentiment around U.S. elections, as you kind of highlighted, is twofold around change, but it's also around the idea that there could be, a positive focus on digital assets and stocks and shares and other things. I think there's a lot of hedging against inflation at the moment. I'm not an economist, but I know that these are things that typically kind of happen within election cycles in the US as a market leader. So it's really going to be positive in a number of different ways, regardless of the long term. But the short term, we can definitely expect to see some market movements, which will be great. On our side, while it does look like we have aligned really nicely with that from a DevvE point of view, I think the more exciting thing from our side is that the Theos issue is now well and truly resolved. We have a plan to move forward. And that's also going to have implications on the DevvE side, even though they're completely, separate entities and separate things. But what that action or activity is kind of solidified for us is that we really do need to move towards, our solution. We need to move towards our chain. We need to, all of these things were part of the process and part of the plan anyway. And obviously, as we're talking about the exchange, it's a critical piece of, infrastructure. The DevvE token will naturally be, an integral part of that. But Theos and DevvE are both now accelerated as kind of the first native tokens to launch on chain. Which I think is kind of no secret, but it is very exciting. The one thing that's kind of holding that back, and what we'd hoped to be able to achieve with the relaunch of Theos, was to have the bridging pieces in place to be able to allow people to then migrate to Ethereum and kind of be able to trade from our contracts, etc. That is definitely still happening. That's something that we're working on, and we're going through some fairly rigorous testing, and we want to make sure that, again, and this is something that anyone in crypto knows who's been there for a while, the bridges are typically a point of weakness, and we want to make sure that we're not introducing more points of vulnerability, more points of weakness. We're rock solid on our side in terms of, we know that if everything just existed in our ecosystem, there would be no problems, but that's not how the world works. We know that we have to touch all of these different things. And again, we're working with some just incredibly intelligent people to both test and go through that process. And that has implications outside of tokens and our chain as well, in terms of, our products and connectivity. You might have heard me mention the S2 business and what that means. But for those that haven't, effectively, one of the verticals that we're looking at is deploying our solution, blockchain as a service style, that will allow any business or enterprise or state level partner, for example, to deploy a blockchain or our sharding solution, to manage that in a number of different ways. But more importantly, because of the way that we integrate through RESTful APIs, it will give them the ability to bring all of their Web 2 infrastructure and capabilities into and connecting through a blockchain to then give them the outputs that they want from a company point of view or a state level partner point of view, et cetera, et cetera. And that's incredibly exciting for a lot of people. But that integration piece is also critical. And you can think of that as another kind of bridge, being able to easily and seamlessly connect through those APIs to whatever vertical or whatever infrastructure and all of those pieces. That's the piece that businesses, really want to abstract or not have, a kind of steep learning curve or a resource requirement around. It's something that they just want to be able to go, yes, you don't want to buy a piece of web software or buy something that you then have to, hire someone to service and support and maintain, right? This is, the world that we live in is all about kind of cloud-based services and software that you can just sort of plug in, and everything's AI and all of that type of thing. So with that in mind, and again, understanding the requirements from an enterprise and a bigger state level partner point of view, these kind of bridging and kind of connectivity pieces are all part of a wider picture around how we work with real world partners, not just crypto partners, but those things are intertwined. And so, yeah, the exciting thing on our side is that there will be an announcement, in the next, I'd say 24 hours at the least, regarding the next steps on the Theos release and how we're going to kind of replace all of those tokens, the contract, etc. But also, we're looking for very, very imminent updates around when those bridging pieces and other things will potentially be in place that will allow us to then, I guess, start moving towards tokens on our chain, tokens that we can then use in other ways, and or how our chain can then be utilized in other ways. And obviously all of this is leading up to the word that I hate and love at the same time, which is the exchange. So that's kind of big picture piece on that side. On the other kind of moving plates and spinning verticals, we've got again, the state level partnerships are very close to finalizing. Or at least one of them, we're expecting the very last pieces of that to start kind of dropping imminently. We're having just some incredibly positive conversations with stakeholders and partners, both on the exchange side, but on the business infrastructure side, on the technology side, and those things are all moving forward. Again, probably the fastest, and these things all do take time, but what we're now doing is looking at the kind of minutiae of detail around what happens where and who happens, who does what, how that happens. So it's really the framing pieces. And what that means for us is that, these things will inevitably become more simple and more streamlined. These are the test cases. These are the big, we have to solve that, or this is something we haven't considered, or these are ways that can, potentially be made easier. And so you get this kind of, what I love, in fact, to kind of draw a parallel, there's a picture on the internet going around about one of Elon Musk's kind of Starship rocket engines that was the first iteration of, have you seen it? Right? It's the first iteration of either the Starship engine or one of the boosters from one of the rockets. And this thing was just spaghetti. There was like cables and wires and kind of pipes and tubes and things coming, and that was the first, successfully deployed rocket motor effectively that got them, into space and was reusable and all of those things. And then if you look at how they've iterated, the latest version of the same engine it's just it's a streamlined piece of engineering sort of, perfection. And we're not at the spaghetti stage, but we are close. Like we're making all of those, infinite little kind of adjustments and kind of things. And we are definitely, looking like that before picture. But what we do have is a real clear kind of idea of how each of those things can be simplified. And I think we were talking earlier about kind of an operational overlap diagram and some things that we've been working through from an ops point of view, and just understanding, the touch points of the various different entities, the various different markets and verticals, and how there's overlaps. And one of the kind of critical pieces that we're working through from an operations side is where those overlaps can be streamlined and introduce kind of efficiencies and processes around both the products and the go-to-markets and all of that stuff. So again, without going into too much kind of vagary or too many details, we're making really good progress, and I think I want to really kind of not tease, but sort of say to people who who watch these updates and have had sort of faith in supporting us throughout the entire process of kind of the chain, the technology, DevvE, etc. You could not be in a better place kind of coming into into where we are now, and I just appreciate your support. We are just incredibly confident that all of the pieces and again, it's not I think our problem is not lack of opportunity, it's too much opportunity. And we are being razor focused now on which of these kind of critical pieces of infrastructure are going to be the most important outside of the exchange, which is wholly and solely, a critical piece of, what we're focused on. But there are so many other opportunities which we're not just uniquely positioned to kind of solve, but we're the only people, that can, in the way that we, both from our intellectual property and patents and all of the rest of it, can provide actual solutions for. So all of those are very, very attractive. What we're trying to make sure now is that with the bigger picture in mind, we build those critical pieces of infrastructure to service all of the pieces that we're looking for. And that's really, really exciting because, again, from an alignment of resources, an alignment of teams, alignment of partners and stakeholders, it's all really coming together, which, again, that's, you can't ask for more than that, right?
Yeah, man. Beautiful position. So I want to just recap on that just a little bit there. Theos announcement, fairly imminent. First token on DevX. The bridging infrastructure being put in place, which should hopefully accelerate the bridging of DevvE also, if I'm not mistaken.
Those two tokens, DevvE, Theos, 100%. That's not going to stop us from solving or resolving and reopening the Theos markets, though. So while that is going to happen, that's not going to be the first step. We will release and re-release the tokens on an ERC20 contract just to get things moving, and all those other pieces will happen afterwards. So I just want to make that clear to people that, what you're not getting is this kind of delay, but also, we're just replacing and we've hardened all of the vulnerabilities and we've eradicated all of those. So those contracts are coming, imminently. The swaps will happen. The details will be released in an announcement, but most people won't have to do anything. They'll just literally open their wallet and they will see, the token has been replaced. But from the next steps point of view, the exciting piece, which is obviously that bridging piece, that's going to see both DevvE and Theos released on our native chain. So yeah, it's worth waiting for.
So on that same kind of vein there, I remember having a Tech Talks with Tom a while back discussing, I think we were talking about fraud, theft, and loss protection. Somehow we wove into the bridging and kind of the solution that he envisioned taking place for DevExchange. And we all know that, prior to Thorchain, God bless him, but there really wasn't a way to bridge native Bitcoin onto an EVM network, let's say. And the way that he had kind of described it is almost in having real institutions being custodians of some of that, the actual funds, right? And I'm wondering how much of that is still in play. Is that still kind of a potential solution on the table? What's that going to look like? Because the single point of potential weakness, as was stated, is definitely, the bridging. And so that's foremost in my mind anyhow.
No, 100%. And I think just in the last 5 minutes, we've probably got time to cover that. So absolutely. And I have to be very careful because I can't name names, but we are in conversations we are looking at exactly that. So for the larger assets and the larger asset classes that will be kind of brought to the exchange, one of the most expedient and simple solutions is to have regulated and trusted custodians managing those resources and holding those resources to provide the assurance that those resources exist, right? It's that simple. So while our exchange will be non-custodial, you don't have, we have no requirement to hold assets on behalf of, the two parties that are meeting to trade those assets. Bringing those resources together, because we're not going to ask individual traders to provide the entire source of Bitcoin, for example, if that's an asset that we're trading on our exchange, we're not going to expect that, trader A is going to hold the entire supply of Bitcoin that trader B is going to, require, and vice versa. There needs to be that kind of market making, that balance of, these assets are available in the market to meet that demand. Now, we can provide all sorts of validation using our platform and technology around the assurances of those assets, and we can make sure that both, the assets that are, available are a mixture of assets held by trader A and assets that are held by a custodial partner. And all that does is effectively provide for want of a better word, liquidity to enable those markets to flourish. Now, these custodians or custodial partners are and will be large regulated institutions that are accountable not just for the assets that they hold, but in the same way that and I use the word trust and bank in the same sentence here, but people trust banks with their money and their assets currently, in the same way that those are kind of insured funds. They are funds that are covered under a regulatory framework. It's the same kind of scenario, and the reason that we will use those partners is to provide that trust and assurance for anyone that's using our exchange or our platform, because again, and we've covered this, it is a true exchange, unlike all of the current brokerage setups and others. It will provide that absolute sort of exchange from A to B, and a T0 settlement. So, assuming that there are people on the buy side and far more buyers than there are sellers, so people want to buy more Bitcoin than people want to sell Bitcoin, we need to have that supply of those assets that is accountable, that is transparent, that is supported by a physical or a representation of those assets and held in a custody solution. And that's how we create those those bigger markets. And it's not just about digital assets like Bitcoin. It's about kind of the wider digital asset kind of market and the possibilities within that around tokenized assets and what that represents. There is going to be a lot that is very, very exciting, on that side. And those markets are not just emerging, but growing and, growing at an exponential pace. So yeah, that hopefully kind of answers that question.
Exactly what Tom had said, and you said it in a wonderfully eloquent way, and I'm not trying to gas you up, but that was wonderful, Davin. Thank you very much, bud. All right, so to put a pin in a nice bow on top, anything we want to touch on before we wrap up here? We're getting close to the 20-minute mark.
No, yeah. I think, again, we are kind of paddling very kind of furiously behind the scenes to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed on a lot of these big pieces of work. That is going to have an impact on both the market, the community, and others. What we're trying to do is just make sure that we are, again, not putting the cart before the horse. We're not sitting on things that we, obviously there are some things that we need to make sure kind of happen before, news announcements and things go out, but we're not kind of waiting for, external factors. We're not trying to time this around, elections or other things like that. It's really a case for us that we want to make sure that we can say what we're saying and show what we're doing at exactly the same time. And those little pieces are, just it's now nuanced. It's now very much about let's do this, get that done now, and then all of those things will flow through. So again, I know we say this every week, but it's getting closer and closer. It's and this is business. There are lots and lots of things that will continue to happen, that will continue to have an impact on on what we're doing, not just from the DevvE point of view and the token and other things, but from the wider utility and the wider opportunity point of view for anyone that's participating and supporting us. It's it's a very good time.
Unbelievable. Davin, thank you so much, my friend. Always a pleasure chatting with you. For anyone tuning in, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you have, thank you for doing that. But thanks for hanging on, guys. As Davin said last week, everyone will be well, we're supremely confident everyone will be rewarded for their patience. So just wanted to echo that. All right, guys, we'll catch you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.